President Moses Magogo, former Minister Mary Goretti Chitutu, and three others who are unwelcomed in the United States and Britain, which poses a question of how long she will remain effective after being locked out of key international financing and travel systems. Let's hear from our councils, both Council Brian and Council Mahat, to see what they have to say about this. Welcome to our show where I'll smell the coffee. My name is Patrick. Council Mahat.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers. About the sanctions, I wouldn't discuss much the spirit in which they are made, but in the mind of a lawyer, they raise many issues. One issue that they raise is sovereignty of states, that all states must be independent of other states. That is the spirit in the UN Charter. The UN Charter, when you look at its provisions, to be more specific around Article 2, it states that every state shall be a sovereign state independent of any other state, which means that countries like the US and Britain are not supposed to involve themselves in the domestic affairs of a country like Uganda, because Uganda must be independent of Britain and the US. So it is alarming that you find that Britain, for the first time, used its anti-corruption sanctions on Uganda for the first time, and they were used on the Speaker of Parliament. Now, the Speaker is not Anita Among. They were categorically clear they sanctioned the Speaker for corruption. So I think that's a little bit absurd, and the sovereignty of a country. As Uganda, we must be able to solve these issues ourselves. These people had not gone to courts of law and so on. So that is one, about the sovereignty of Uganda. Number two, now Ugandans should know, and the people in power in Uganda, that when these sanctions are imposed on you, if you are doing activities in Uganda, sanctions can be imposed actually by different states. We have seen how sanctions have ravaged North Korea, how sanctions have affected the countries like Iran. So if people in Uganda just behave the way they want, they will find that those sanctions will even have an impact on their political aspirations. Before, there was a minister of Uganda, Sam Kutesa. Sam Kutesa was an international player, but when he was sanctioned by the US, Minister Sam Kutesa could no longer play internationally. And eventually, even here in Uganda, he was dropped from cabinet in 2021. So you might find that Anita Amongi's fate of being speaker in the after 2026 can be limited by these sanctions, because I don't think the president would want to work with a lame speaker. Lame per se, because she's sanctioned. She cannot attend Commonwealth meetings. There are very many international meetings. Remember, Rebecca Kadaga was even heading parliamentary international forums like that, the Commonwealth. So if you have a speaker who cannot represent you there, I think you'll have to choose another one. So that will affect the political status of Anita Among. She would look into that. Now, I don't know why they targeted the Moses Magogo, because maybe Moses Magogo is a husband of Anita Among, and the nature of these sanctions, sometimes they are not only imposed on you, but even your immediate family members. When you look at Kaihura, when Kaihura was sanctioned in 2019, many sanctions went to his immediate family members. They could also not travel. But in this case, Magogo also is the FIFA president in Uganda, heads the Football Association. So if you say a person heading a football association in Uganda cannot travel, I think as Uganda we need to check ourselves in how we do things, because we shall be losing out on football, we shall be losing out on international forums. The speaker cannot attend, and you find that now even the FIFA president cannot attend, with other individuals. Like I've heard of Elwelu. Elwelu has also been sanctioned for human rights abuse. Elwelu, I think, participated in the Kasese saga, and most of the things about human rights I am in support of sanctions for such things. Much as we are a sovereign state, you might find that there are circumstances where we cannot stand our ground on human rights. People in power should look at this as a key to start respecting human rights. If generals and soldiers abuse human rights and there is no legal regime within the country, some of these instruments for human rights were even ratified by Uganda. So if you abuse power to that level and there is nothing at the domestic level to punish you, then we are grateful somebody is punishing them from abroad. At least they can't travel. It is not the best, but at least we feel somebody is doing something. So there would be in support of what the US and the UK are doing. But the Ugandan legal regime should also step up their game. We should not wait for people to come and tell us that one is not respecting human rights, do this to him. We have sanctioned him. We should have mechanisms in place. What is the Uganda Human Rights Commission doing? It must have sanctioned all these people on its own. People in Uganda in power should know that even after a regime goes, you can still be even sentenced. When you look at the son of the president of Liberia, Charles Taylor, the son of Charles Taylor, Chaco Taylor, was sentenced to 97 years in the US for activities he committed in Liberia. He's now serving 97 years in prison. So I think people in Uganda should know that it might not even stop at the sanctions. The US can go an extra mile to even indict some of these people and even imprison them and issue arrest warrants, so on and so forth. So it is absurd that the sovereignty of our state has been affected, but then it is good that somebody is speaking to the devil now in Uganda. So I think briefly that's what I can give you.
Yes, thank you very much, Kasoma Hai. Now let's go to Katho Brian.
Very much our host for today. Good afternoon, our viewers. As introduced, Onzala John Brian, an advocate by profession and working with Lufunya State Advocates. Well, for me, the issue of the West slapping sanctions on countries in the world is something that goes beyond what is enshrined in the UN Charter on sovereignty of states. For me, it's more like a checks and balances by the developed West whipping the underdeveloped either Africa or Asian states. But specifically, I will talk about the issue at hand. What is happening in my home country is really terrible and pathetic, that we have what I would call servants, public servants, in the name of Anita Mong, who is the current speaker. We also have former ministers for Karamoja, Mary Goreti Kitutu and her deputy, Nandutu, plus several others who have been slapped with sanctions, which among others involve majorly travel sanctions. Now, what is the purpose of a sanction, or what reasons do nations give for sanctions? Basically, I will break this down into two. We have sanctions to compel a state actor or an individual to do something, and we have sanctions as smart sanctions. Basically, the British government, for the first time, has acted under the global anti-corruption regime to slap sanctions on the speaker and the other Ugandan ministers. For me, I will look at this on the international fora. Do these sanctions affect our speakers' travel to other countries? Of course, one would argue that not, because, well, they may bite in as far as her travels and financial transactions to the United Kingdom. Okay, they may bite as far as her travels to the United Kingdom and financial transactions are concerned. But I don't think that a sanction prohibiting the speaker from going to the United Kingdom could also affect her travels to any other country. Of course not. So internationally, one would argue that sanctions affect the sovereignty of states, which is correct. But then the question that one has to ask is, if we did not have sanctions, would then that imply that other nations are going to do things the way they want? Because I believe that these sanctions help to check certain individuals, like here at home. I believe that in any sane democracy, the speaker would have already either resigned or should be subject to investigations from various state actors like the anti-corruption bodies, of course, IGG, name it. But to our surprise, it's not even surprising that nothing has been done, because where in a given country you don't have strong institutions, then issues like corruption are not going to be fought by those who are in power, because for them to fight corruption would be akin to fighting themselves. So on the issue of sanctions, basically, I feel yes, Anita as a person may not leave Uganda to travel to either America or the British soil, but we as Ugandans, there is nothing that we are going to gain, because if in any case many government funds have been either allegedly embezzled by these people, the money is not going to be paid back. So even where we have these sanctions, they're just there in the name of it, that just we have sanctions. And the other thing is that they also portray a negative picture about the holder of that position of speaker, but they don't have a direct positive impact on a Ugandan whose rights have been violated, or where monies were allocated to a given project and have been embezzled. And what the US government or the UK government is doing is to just slap a sanction on them. Okay, stop them from going to the US or the UK, and then what? So for me, these sanctions should be an eye-opener to institutions here that are interested in fighting human rights violations, institutions whose mandate is to fight corruption, to also borrow a leaf and at least take enormous steps to ensure that some of these individuals whose actions are contrary to the positions that they hold in government are brought to book. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be a guest on this show.
Maybe to add on something small on what you have just said. It's high time we also understand that in international law, there are certain things we are supposed to follow. The legal language, we use the word, the principle of pactus sunt servanda. But what we are establishing too in international law is that agreements must be kept.
Absolutely.
Uganda has ratified the UN Charter, the Banjul Charter, a lot of conventions on human rights violations. And when you are a resident in Uganda, in the position of per se general, speaker, political position or military position, and you start to disrespect these conventions, and you are the one in power, you are untouchable here, I think somebody should come up, let's say the head prefects of this world should come up and punish you. So really for me, those sanctions are welcome. Much as I complain about they are affecting our sovereignty, but they are welcome. We have jus cogens in law, but the presumptive norms we are supposed to follow. in the world, and among them is prohibitions from torture, human rights violation. Actually, I think a person who is violating human rights, we are looking forward to arrest warrants from the ICC. We should not just stop at sanctions, like he said. The money won't come back. Let's have arrest warrants from the ICC. Let's have some of these people indicted and perhaps sentenced. That's what I can add on. I thank you for listening.
You have added on and how deeply the sanction affects us as a country. We are sponsored by Kitauli's International. Thank you for watching us. So, grab some other coffee and remain Madrid.